Hey everyone, I'm back at home. I just finished my very first television interview on WJLA ABC. That's our local ABC affiliate. And I recorded it off my TV. I didn't even wait for an embed code. Here it is.
You there? Have you ever been on a life-changing trip? After a quick break, we're going to tell you how you can get the most from your travels and discover your destiny. Stay with us to find out.
Whether you're doing a staycation or going across the world, you can turn your travel into a spiritual experience. One woman wrote a book on how she quit her job, bought a train ticket, and left town without a plan, all to find a greater purpose in life. Telling us about her journey is the author of The Mystical Backpacker and How to Discover Your Destiny in the Modern World. Welcome, Hannah Papp.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So you just dropped everything and left.
Everything, yes.
How did you do that? Your friends, your family, your pets, anybody?
Well, at the time I didn't have pets, so
Okay.
that made it a little bit easier.
Friends and family, who cares about that? You didn't have pets, okay.
Just let them know.
Right.
And essentially, yeah, I just basically decided that I needed to break out of the box and really reconnect with who I was at the core, to find my authenticity. And the way I did that was to go and have an adventure.
Some adventure. How do you, when you say it's a spiritual adventure and you're saying you're trying to find yourself, what were you missing? Like, were you not happy here? Or
I see, that's a good question. I think that many of us are happy in our day-to-day lives, but a lot of our living is actually responsive living. And what I mean by that is we are acting in response to a lot of things that happen to us throughout the day. So let's say, for example, if we're on our way to work and the train is late, then we are now making decisions for our day and for our lives based on a response mechanism.
Right.
You get to work, your boss tells you something that you need to do. Again, you're acting response.
Right, a responsive action, yeah.
Right. And so I think what happens, especially because today's modern life is so fast-paced and we're on social media all of the time, everything is part of a conversation. And so really having that separate space to be connected with your authentic self and also to be really standing in your truth becomes a harder and harder place to access.
Now, I want to ask, because for me personally, to go and do what you did, to go on that journey, I'd have to ask myself, and I guess I'm responsive action here, is how am I going to afford that? You know, most people can't afford just to drop everything and then go on a vacation.
Sure.
Or a trip.
And yeah, I think, well, mystical backpackers are travelers rather than tourists.
Okay.
And when I went on a shoestring budget. In fact, I joke and I tell people that's the poorest I think I've ever been in my life when I was traveling like that.
Well, were you concerned about health insurance? I mean, God forbid something happened to you.
So I started my trip, but everybody can start their trip from a different place.
Okay.
I started my trip from a place where I did have insurance and it was already paid for through a year.
Oh, okay.
So I had gone abroad to study, to be at graduate school.
Okay.
And I had stayed abroad to continue to work for a firm. And so I was covered in that regard. I was also in my 20s, and so I don't think you're as worried about your health then.
You're absolutely right. So you went on for graduate school, you said?
Yes.
Okay, so that explains. I was going to ask you, what's the difference in what you did, your journey, versus like Wild, the movie made popular by Reese Witherspoon.
Sure.
So what's the difference there? Because, or like Eat, Work, Play, the movie with Julia Roberts, where they didn't really, well, we didn't see them work, but you're saying you worked, you were in school.
What's really interesting about both of those stories is that they are initiated by trauma. And so in the case of Elizabeth Gilbert, she essentially, her husband leaves her out of the blue and he takes her for everything, and she kind of loses everything that she thought was true in her life. And that initiates her adventure.
Her journey,
in the case of Wild, she had become a drug addict. She had lost her parents. Again, it's trauma that's initiating this kind of desperate attempt to find the core of the self.
And for you, it was just wanting to find.
For me, it wasn't. What about like average people who, you know, you're not living in a tragedy and you're not experiencing something that's unnerving the very foundation of your life. On the other hand, days can become monotonous, and it's the same old, and you think, wow, is this all there is? Is this my life?
Right. So what did you learn about yourself and your journey?
Well, it was incredible. I learned, I think the most important takeaway would be that brave people are always scared.
Yeah.
And that if you want to step into a vision of your life that you have for yourself, you just have to be brave and get comfortable with fear. And I think a lot of people allow fear to stymie them.
Right.
And so they don't take those steps to grow just because
they're afraid of what's going to happen.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much, Ms. Papp, for coming in today.
You're very welcome.
It.
Thank you for having me.
The book, of course, The Mystical Backpacker. And interesting how you can just drop everything. So don't be afraid to go find out who you are. For more information about how you can become a mystical backpacker, go to themysticalbackpacker.com. And we'll have more on Let's Talk Live coming up after the break. So drop it and go.